Hello everyone, welcome back to Parkitect and welcome back to campaign mode. And for today's episode we're going to be tackling Ice Shelf Islands. Now the introduction for this one reads: a small amount of land has become available in the frigid north and presents an opportunity for an amusement park. Brave the challenging weather and help your guests forget the cold. So obviously it's going to be a cold, wintry themed map, which is kind of appropriate, especially if you're in the UK or Northern Europe at the moment, because the weather is absolutely freezing right now. And as we come into Christmas, I think it would be nice to do a seasonal sort of themed build. So the goals for this one are to get 550 guests in the park, which I don't think is too bad. I think that's doable with a few coasters. Have a happiness rating of 75%, and then the optional goals are the experience rating of 70%. Now that's something that we struggled with before, but yeah, we'll see. And the other optional goals to do it by the end of June year 3. So let's take a look at the map. Okay, so here we are in the Ice Shelf Islands map. Just pause it for a second. So we've got quite a lot of space to work with here. You've got loads of space to work with. The terrain's quite difficult because it is slightly hilly, and then we've got sort of big lake in the middle and then water surrounding all these sort of little islands, but they're all joined together by land. So yeah, they're not really islands, I guess they kind of are. And then there's this big block of ice here, which is kind of cool. Not entirely sure what we're going to do with that, and in fact I'm not sure what we're going to do with the map in general, to be honest. So let's have a look again. I'm going to put the price down to 0. Yeah, so we do get a reward for, if we get an experience rating of 70%, we get a reward of £5,000, so that might help with our building. We'll just see what rides we've got. Carousel, 4D cinema and Ferris wheel. Loads of thrill rides, or quite a few anyway. The drop tower, that's a good one, I like building that. Just the bobsled and the wild mouse then for coasters. Obviously we're going to build the bobsled, be rude not to in this campaign. Monorail, probably won't do that, and no water rides. Too cold for water rides, so we won't worry about that either. To be honest, I haven't got a Scooby what I'm going to do for the theming of this one, so I think what we'll just do is get into the time lapse, try and beat the goals, and then take it from there really. So I'll see you over in the first time lapse. Right, so the first coaster that we're going to put in the park is a bobsled coaster. I did have several previous attempts at building this coaster type with just a standard layout, but unfortunately I wasn't happy with how they looked, so I didn't keep the recordings and I just scrapped it and started again. One of them was crashing off the track as well and I couldn't get it to complete the layout without crashing. So what I've ended up going for is this sort of dueling toboggan or dueling bobsled concept, which I don't believe is anything you can find in the real world anywhere, but it looks pretty cool in Parkitect. I really like the aesthetics of this, and we can double the capacity for this coaster and make plenty of money, which is what we need for them campaign goals. So yeah, it's really good in terms of gameplay, this coaster, because it wasn't extremely expensive to build, and obviously it's, like I said, it doubles the capacity. I've got several trains running on there, I think 2 on each track, so yeah, we can get 4 full trains out and charge sort of £12 for each track. We're making a fair few quid off it. Now the dueling element I always find difficult for any dueling coaster, to keep the pacing correct on both tracks so that they synchronise throughout the layout, and I think this one does that pretty well, except for in the end there is one train that always wins, and no matter what I did to readjust the layout, I couldn't get it quite spot on, but it's fine. They duel throughout most of the layout, and yeah, there's some really nice sort of moments where they're going around helixes together, and yeah, I just think dueling coasters look so good in these sort of isometric grid based games. I used to like building them in the classic RCT games, but I could never get them to duel very well. And yeah, I feel like this is a fairly good attempt, and it's something not very realistic, but it's good fun. It's good fun to watch, and my main struggle with it actually was getting back to the station once I'd done the bulk of the layout, because I left myself very little room for sort of a brake run or anything like that, and I didn't want to destroy other parts of the layout because I felt that it looked good. So yeah, I was giving myself very little room basically, but it's fine. We managed to find a way through. I do think this is a really cool coaster concept as well. I'm not sure who manufactures these in real life. The only one I've ridden on is Avalanche at Blackpool, and I think that's quite a fun ride. You get some good speed on it, but it's the way you see it is quite uncomfortable, I think. But obviously that's just sort of the nature of the design, like how the trains have to be, really. Certainly wouldn't want to go on it single rider with someone I didn't know, put it that way. But yeah, it is a really cool sort of concept for a coaster, and yeah, I'd love to see more of these out there. Actually, I can't really think of that many off the top of my head. But we had to put some sort of bobsled coaster into this park because it goes perfectly with the theming. I've also got sort of an idea of just something like that I might do with some extra track pieces around when I get to theming this park, but we'll get back to that later. At this point I had to sort of work out where the queue lines and the exit paths were going to be, because I haven't started doing any of the layout for the park yet either, not at all. So I had to start making some sort of ideas here, and we just build a pathway up. I don't know if I'm happy with the colours of the path. It possibly blends in a bit too much with the water. I think I'm going to revisit that at a later stage. I might do some terrain work as well, because I'm not sure if I'm happy with all the pathways going over the water like that. Maybe if we could sort of build up that island a bit. I mean, it's probably not what you should do, because you should work with the terrain that the map gives you. But I think it would just look kind of cool to have that built on some sort of islands. I can only assume that this campaign map was inspired by the added loopy landscapes. Was it one of the first levels in that expansion pack for RCT1? Because it's got a similar sort of theme. I remember that was a load of different islands, but because of the style of the terrain in that map, you could easily like make loads of tunnels with the bobsled and stuff, which is originally something I had in mind, but I wouldn't be able to do it straight away anyway, because all that terrain work would cost quite a lot of money. So that's something I'd have to go back to when the goals are complete anyway. But with the layout of this one, I think I want most of the track on show, so that's probably not something I'll do, but I am going to work a bit with the terrain and see what I can do. But we'll get to that later anyway. Sorry for rambling about that. Let's talk about what I'm actually building now then. So you probably saw me put in a couple of flat rides there, just to sort of get the park open and get some guests coming in. And then I start working on this B&M Invert coaster, which I spent probably the most time out of this whole time lapse section working on this layout, because I changed my mind about it so many times. Initially I was going to have the lift hill going up across, like in front of where that drop tower is, and the town section that we're putting in there, and then I thought that didn't work, so I built half the layout over to one side of the map, and then I've got it coming across with a 0G roll and then underground, and then we're going to have some corkscrews, so like the double corkscrews coming out, which will sort of run along the side of the path. And I think that's a really cool sort of element, what do you call, like, you know, an element that people interact with really interactive. What's the word I'm looking for? It's yeah, it's just got a good level of interaction with the path, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. But then I still wasn't completely happy with this layout because I felt the way it goes back to the station just looks really boring, just like a straight line into a curve into a brake run. So I remodeled the end of that section, and it took me absolutely ages to work out a helix that I could get in there that wasn't too slow for the train to make it round, because it's lost a lot of its pace by this point. It's lost a lot of its speed, so I had to keep trying different things until I could get a helix in there that worked, that the train could get around basically to complete the layout. And then we end up doing a sort of S-bend into the brake run at the end there. So yeah, really there ends up being two sections to this coaster. You've got the sort of initial, probably more intense section, and then the second half of it is more almost like an exploration coaster. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with how it looks, sort of. And once we've got theming in place, I think it will look really cool, because it will be interacting a lot with the theming as well, like going in and out of tunnels and path work and stuff like that. So yeah, this is like definitely one of the star attractions. Once the coaster was complete, I ended up sticking in a wipeout. We've already got one, but I put another wipeout in, and I removed the original one. And a little food area with a depot, just to get more people coming over to this area, so that they want to ride the coaster as well, because it's sort of stuck out to the edge of the park on its own. So yeah, then I put together a quick wild mouse. This is mainly just so that I can meet the goals in time. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep it or not. It's sort of like Gerschlauer layout, I believe, rather than your classic wild mouse. And yeah, I quite like the way it looks, but I don't know. I might do something different with Wild Mouse Coaster in this park, because we can use the mine train things as well. So that, and then really it's just a case of waiting to finish the goals. Really doing a bit of advertisement. I had to go back to a couple of auto saves, but then you can see here we do meet the goals. Okay, welcome to the completed map. Well, not the completed map, but the goal completed maps. Obviously you just saw there that we won the goals, so they're all done and we don't have to worry about that now. We've obviously done absolutely zero theming with this park so far, so that's something that I want to do next, theme the whole thing up. The only sort of idea I've got really is to do some sort of ice castle. The bobsled coaster goes into at the top section here, and then just build some rock work going down and around it, I guess. It's quite, I do think it's quite difficult to theme a bobsled, but we'll see what we can do with that. And then I want some sort of wintry town here, whether it's a Christmas town or not, I'm not sure, but just something going along here. I think I will delete and possibly move this coaster somewhere else. I think I've got some other ideas for that, but I'm not sure yet. And then that frees up this land, so I'm going to rejiggle some of the flat rides. Like this one, it's just the placement isn't very good. So yeah, I think I'm going to go in, and the first thing I'm going to do is start moving some stuff around, and then we'll take it from there. So I'll see you back over in the time lapse. So welcome back to the time lapse. The first thing that I wanted to get working on is to rearrange some of the rides to positions that I wanted them in, and sort out some of the path work, because I wasn't happy with this blue path going everywhere. I felt it worked quite well for the area around the coaster, but for this sort of main street I wanted something a little more realistic, I suppose, a little more sort of alpine almost. So went for this completely different path style, And we've got the wooden path sort of along the front as well, where we're going to put some seating and stuff so that people can look out, have a view over the lake. And then I went over to section where the wipeout is to do a bit more work over here. You can see that we've put a motion simulator down there as well. So that's going to be an indoor ride, just so that we've got another indoor ride. We're not really theming it up, we're just going to give it a cover. And yeah, that's mainly just because of the cold conditions of this map. It's good to have a couple of indoor rides that guests can enjoy when the weather's not so good. So I'm doing this trick again with sort of curved paths the best I can, using some custom shapes, or rather some basic shapes to sort of blend it in as well with the border pieces. I think that works really nicely. We've got a sort of raised wooden platform as well there, where we're going to put some seating for the food and drink stalls in this area. So this would almost be like some sort of alpine lodge or whatever, where people could go and get their food and drink and get a view of the coasters going round while they take a break from riding, I guess. Yeah, just using basic pieces here, nothing too clever, just some castle walls, and then for the top layer some wooden walls with some trellis pieces in the windows, just to give it a bit of a different effect. I think that looks quite nice. And then we cover it all up with obviously a roof. Yeah, this isn't sort of the best theming I've ever done, but it suits the style of the map, and it gives the sort of effect that we're looking for here, really. To start with, I thought we'll try it all snowy roofs, but I wasn't happy with how that looked, so I changed the colour and then just added some white plants onto the top. Or actually, I can't remember what pieces I used there. They might have been one of the candy pieces to replicate snow, because it's got quite a nice texture. I think that works quite well for what we're going for there. And you can see that I'm chopping out some parts of the build, because otherwise, like always, it would get a bit too long. And you don't need to see every little detail of what I'm putting in to the map. We use some of the lanterns as well, which gives a very nice wintry vibe. I do like those lanterns when you sort of change the colours up a bit. You can change the theme that they're supposed to be sort of replicating. And there you can see the building for the motion simulator or the dark ride. I guess we could sort of pretend this is something like the Wild Arctic ride at Orlando SeaWorld. But yeah, it really doesn't matter what the ride is inside there. It's just somewhere for people to keep sort of dry and warm. So yeah, I'm quite happy with how that building looks. It blends in nicely with all the scenery around it. And then you can also see that I've moved the tourbillon next to that as well, so that's over in this area. So there's quite a few rides over in this section of the park now, and it improves the sort of guest footfall, gets this area a little bit busier. So the next thing that I work on then is the coaster station for the inverted coaster, and for this one I just sort of went for a ski resort type feel to it. I really wasn't sure, and I'm still not really sure what the theme is I'm going for on this map, to be honest. It's probably a bit sort of mismatched, various sort of different winter themes that work in a snowy environment, but it all looks pretty nice. It's all quite nice compositions, so that's the main thing really. And it all fits the theme that we're going for. So yeah, just sort of layering up different wall pieces, and then the main sort of element to this station is the roof. I think the roof quite nicely sort of imitates what this is supposed to be, with different sort of pitch sections, and it makes this rectangular building look a little bit less boring and boxy, and a little more off-grid as well. So yeah, I've played about a bit trying to get the colour right. just looking at sort of various reference images for ski resort buildings before I put this together, and I thought, yeah, that's something that we can use here. Plus it's sort of a bit out of the way of the rest of the map, a bit out sort of in the sticks, so it could be a believable building for this type of area, I guess. Just noticed as well there's loads of sick on the park there where people have chucked up after going on the ride, so hopefully the janitors come over and clean that up soon. Yeah, anyway, back to the building, just finishing it off with some borders and various things like that. And then I do make some nice little custom plant pots as well that go in, and some custom windows, even though you can't really see them that well if you zoom in. I thought it looked a bit odd just having one of the generic open windows looking through. So yeah, I stick a chimney on this building as well. I don't know how realistic that would be, but I just sort of felt that it needed one, and it breaks up the sort of plain roof colour as well a bit. So yeah, I think it looks okay. And you can also see that I've put some snow around where the borders would sort of be for or the fencing or whatever for the pathwork. These are made from, I think they're like hedge pieces or something, but they work really well to replicate snow, just a line of snow there. So I think that looks quite good. I should probably put some snow on the roofs as well there for them buildings, but we might come back to that. So now we're working on the main street, and this is a completely different theme. This is sort of your typical alpine Christmas sort of village, like, you know, your typical sort of village at winter in this sort of climate, if that makes sense. Basically just using loads of reference images for inspiration, and then sort of doing my own take on them with the pieces that we can use in Parkitect. I really like this use of the candy pieces there, the candy canes, to make some windows. So I think that looks pretty cool. And then just sinking in windows for the upstairs ones as well. So we've got two different types of windows, and then using the sort of yellow colour to imitate the light shining through. And it's nice and bright and festive. I wouldn't say it's an out and out sort of Christmas build, but I guess like it could be an alpine village or something like that. But like I say, it fits nicely with the theme of the map, and yeah, I'm pretty happy with how it looks. I really like this use of the adventure roof, and it's not something that I use very often because it's not actually it's not listed under roofs in the scenery items for some reason. It's like just a building piece that's in a separate folder. So it's not something I use that often, but it works really nicely as a sort of tiled roof without having to, you know, build it all custom made. So yeah, that's the first building complete, and probably my favourite one actually out of the three that we put in this part of the time lapse. Yeah, I just think it's got a really warm feel to it, and probably the most detailed of the three. So hopefully it's the one that draws everyone's attention. And then in this one we go for completely different colours, but again probably wouldn't look at our place in an alpine style village, just using the brown, different shades of brown roof, using that same roof again, along with some really plain walls and not too much detail on this one. Like I say, just wanted something that fits in nicely next to the one we've already got. Obviously we'd already built all the shops and stalls and facilities for this area, so they'll all be inside these buildings. I'm not going to worry too much about what's in each one. We're just going to keep it as it is because, you know, gameplay wise everything's running smoothly anyway, so there's no need to mess about too much with what we've got going on there. So I did end up changing the borders for the roofs to these pieces. I don't really know what you'd call them, but I think it really gave the building just a nice little bit more detail without having to change too much, and I think that works really well and gives it much more of a feel to make it blend in with this area. It's amazing sometimes just changing one piece can do that to a building. And then I just add these little squares to jut out a bit and colour them the same colour as the wall itself. And really, although it's a small detail, you wouldn't notice it that much. It's just to make the wall seem like it's a little bit more textured when you zoom in and have a look at the building itself. So yeah, all of these buildings are getting their chimneys as well, so we've got chimneys on all of these. And we move on to the third and final building for this time lapse, and yeah, this one was a bit of a struggle because of knowing where to put the different roof pieces, if that makes sense, and having everything look coherent. And like you can see there, I've not noticed, but I've sunk a window into another roof piece and it just didn't look right, so I had to rearrange it a bit and sort all that out. Also, again, trying to make it not look not boxy, and have different sort of sections to it. So we've got some overhang sections here as well, some overhanging roofs, and all stuff like that. So yeah, it took quite a bit of playing about with. I tried different roof combinations as well, different roof pieces, but in the end I decided to just stick to the ones we're using here. And then I did change the border colours up to make it. This building, I think, looks kind of really like old-fashioned, almost like a really traditional sort of building. But yeah, all in all, I'm quite happy with the three different colour schemes that we've got for these. I think they tie in quite nicely together. It could be an Alpine village, but it could be just as well anywhere in Europe, like a German Christmas market or something like that, just for example. I'm really not sure. We're just going with the flow for this one. And again, I'm probably going to have to add snow to all these roofs as well at some point, but that's something we can come back to. If we're going to have it on one section of the park, really I suppose we should have it everywhere. I don't know, something I'll think about. But yeah, the final sort of touch to this building was putting in a tower with, this isn't going to be a clock actually here, I was going to add some text to it, but for some reason the text tool started playing up and it wouldn't do the font that I wanted it to. Every time that I placed it down, it kept going back to the generic font. So I was just going to put, you know, an initial, like just a letter in there, and that would be the letter of the name of this restaurant or whatever it is, and then we'll probably put a sign somewhere else on the building saying what the actual name of the restaurant is. But yeah, that's something I can come back to at a later stage. And then finally in this time lapse, just doing some finishing touches with the path work and where the coaster goes under into the underground section, which I kind of really struggled with actually, because there's just two bits of path that won't go there because of the collision sort of space that the coaster needs, and it kind of just doesn't look quite right. I'm not completely happy with it, so in the end I add a load of rock work, but I think some of this gets done off camera. I do realise that at time of talking about this, we're still working on the building, and we're actually doing, you can actually see me trying to place that that letter down from the text there. I've sort of jumped ahead in what I'm talking about. I'm not even sure if I recorded any of the bit where I play about with a coaster, but it doesn't matter, because what we're going to do in just a sec is go into a live portion. Just before we do that, I replaced the 4D cinema with a carousel because I just thought it looked too modern and didn't fit in with the theme of the rest of this little town. So yeah, we replaced that up, and we will give this one a cover to make it fit in nicely with the rest of the area. So that's about it for this time lapse then. I'm going to go into one more real-time portion now, and I'll see you all over there. Here we are then in Ice Shelf Islands, and as you can see, our main street's looking pretty good now. I do really like the way that's come together. I think what I'll do is put one more building here to cover the queue, or I might just have a canopy there, but a better one than that. And then obviously, like I said, we'll put a cover on the carousel here, just to complete that. And we'll put a different cover on this teacups ride here to make it blend in better with the building. Or not a teacup, sorry, twister, isn't it? Twister ride in there. Probably need to do something with this as well, and then cover this area, and then that's this part of the park pretty much complete. We've still got to do some theming for the bobsled coaster. Really not too sure exactly how we're going to go about that, but that's something I can get to at a later stage. I might tone down this roof colour a bit. I don't know, I'm not sure. I don't know if I feel it's too bright. A darker green might look better, but I'm not sure. As you can see, what I've done here with the coaster is put loads of rock work in, and then there's just some supports here to make it look like it's going in using basic shapes and pillars, and then I've just used the fog effects to cover up any parts of tunnel that you can see or anything that doesn't look quite right. It's just this section here. Really, I need this to be, I'm not sure, I might just make this wooden path and then this path, and then just ignore the fact that the concrete path ends there. It's because I've put this building here, really it wants to be one further back. I suppose I could move that back a bit, I'm not sure, I'm going to look into that. Another thing I wanted to do was build this ride, the suspended, whatever it's called, inverted dark ride, round the back coming out in between the buildings, but now that I've put this main street in, I don't think it would look right for the area, so I think we're going to scrap that idea. But yeah, I'm going to continue working on this section and hopefully get this finished, and then we can move on to the remainder of the park. So I'll see you over in the final time lapse. Welcome back to the third and final time lapse then, and in this one obviously we get the park finished, but there's quite a lot to still work on, including this main street area. So as you can see, I put a cover over the carousel, just a very basic sort of building to blend it in with the rest of the main street, and this doesn't have to be a super detailed building either. I wanted to keep this one quite simple, so that it doesn't stand out as much as the other buildings. And at this point I got really stuck because I wanted to cover up the depot, the big depot behind the main street, from the sort of perspective that we view the map from, because obviously you wouldn't be able to see it at guest level anyway because it's being blocked by all the facades. And I had this idea that I wanted the trackless dark ride to run over the top, so I tried really hard to make that work, but there just wasn't enough space, and it was just getting too high behind. I was building too high to cover everything up behind the main street, and it just didn't really work. So in the end, what I decided to do is just to have a fake minecart running up and down behind the building roofs, with a sort of little sort of Santa's workshop style theme, kind of thing. And it's quite hard to explain what I mean, but this is basically just for show, just so that the guests would see this little minecart running sort of behind the or rather above the roofs of the main street buildings and think, oh, there's something sort of going on there. But it's not a real ride, it's just for show. So all I did really was built some track in and out, going sort of in and out of these doorways and buildings. And at the end of the track, I put I put a sort of one curb up, so that the minecart gets to the end of the track, then rolls back to the station, and then I just put it on the lowest minimum and maximum wait time, so that it keeps going, so that the guests keep seeing it in action. And it looks like it's going back and forth, sort of carrying supplies or whatever. And initially I put loads of crates and stuff like that, but I replaced them with Christmas presents in the end, because although we're not going really Christmassy on this one, I wanted a little bit of a sort of nod towards that this is a festive village type build, type area, I suppose. So yeah, that's so I didn't really know what I was talking about then. I sort of drifted away a bit. I do apologise. That's what I meant then by the minecart. As you can see, it's a lot easier to just see what I'm doing with it than explain. I decided that the track, the wild mouse track, didn't really work for it because it was slightly too high. So I ended up taking the liberty of making my own mine train track, and that was a real pain to do, but I think it does look good. I mean, some of the rails aren't completely accurate because they're running on cables, or rather I use the cable pieces for them, so the train does slightly come off the track, but it's not hugely noticeable. I did the sort of best I could with the situation, and I think it does look really good, and it does give the effect of a proper minecart running up and down this little track. I think if I was playing with mods, I could probably use like the train track or something like that and place it over, instead of having to do it with all custom, and I could probably have it looking a bit more realistic, like the train's actually on the track. But yeah, we're limited a bit with vanilla, so sometimes I have to, sacrifice perfection to get the idea that I'm going for. And I think it just works a lot better than using the original coaster track for that. And it's something different. I've not really tried anything like this before in one of the builds, and yeah, I think I'm happy with how that turned out. So that just leaves us really to do some finishing touches on the main street and then work on the front of the park, which is what I'm going to move on to next. As you can see, I'm just adding some stuff here and there, sorting out some of the fences, putting in some planters, and some plants and benches and stuff like that, just really finishing off this area, which is now mostly complete. And not really a lot more to say about that. Getting lost for words on this one. I do think in the end, well, rather, I do know that in the end I put a couple of the roofs in snow. I wasn't going to because they look better without it, but I just thought it wouldn't really make sense to not have snow on the roofs of this build. And to be honest, there'd probably be some sort of small layer of snow on the top of all the coaster track as well, but I'm certainly not going around doing all that. But I think to get the effect of the theme that we're going for as well, we did have to put in some snow as well. And there you can see me just working on some Christmas presents, to give it that sort of, like Santa's Grotto, I suppose, sort of vibe. Now you can see I'm working on a building for the Twister, I believe is under there. Just so that we've got another indoor ride. We're doing quite well now. We've got 3 indoor rides, which is really good for a gameplay element. Even though we've beaten the goals, it'll just keep the guests happy because they can keep warm and dry while they're going on these rides. There's plenty of indoor areas in the park for them to visit, I didn't really know what to do for this building, so I just kept it quite generic. I didn't want this one to stand out too much. I want the sort of centre free buildings to be the thing that draws everyone's attention to when they're looking at the park. So yeah, I use sort of more bland and sort of darker colours that wouldn't stand out as much, I guess, although I suppose that doesn't really make sense because with the snowy background they contrast that quite a lot. But yeah, like you can see there, the snow goes in on the roofs. I'm not entirely happy with it, but I do think it works better using these candy pieces rather than just the basic shapes for this. But I'm just not keen on snow on roofs in Parkitect in general. It looks too bright, but I just felt that I had to do it for this campaign, for this map rather. Finally then, in this area, just sticking a very quick roof covering over the queue for the drop tower, so there's nothing really to talk about there. It's literally just some pillars and some roof pieces. I feel like things like this, I'm just going to keep them dead basic because I'm not really sure what else to do for them, to be honest. And then I've started working on this really nice little house. It's got absolutely no purpose other than to just introduce you into this area as you come through the entrance. I've went for a sort of whimsical style theme with this one, and I think it looks really nice, really festive, really wintry. And yeah, doing a few custom bits there, so I just use obviously on-grid wall pieces, on-grid adventure roofs, and then some off-grid shapes as well, so that it looks less boxy and a little more free, four-dimensional, whatever. Yeah, just to take it off-grid a bit. That's kind of a useful way of doing that with using the basic shapes. And then I stick a little balcony round the top floor there, and a little window and a bit of planting. And then I used a bit of a trick here, sticking the windows out a bit, placing them on grid space 10 but one forward from the actual building itself, and then sticking some cubes behind them to help them blend in, and the same for the door, and I think that works out quite well. And yeah, it's just something a little bit different rather than keep doing the same thing over and over again. I guess once I get to this stage of building a campaign map, I do tend to find it a little bit repetitive, and I struggle sometimes to find different ways in which to make things look different and creative. As you know, you can find this game limiting sometimes, with especially with the vanilla pieces, so sometimes it can be quite a struggle to think of different ideas. Usually I sort of have a look on Google Images and Pinterest and stuff like that, and see if I can find any reference images to sort of get inspiration from. I say sometimes, I do that all the time really, but sometimes it's fun to look and think, how can I do that, replicate that, or take inspiration from that but using the vanilla Parkitect pieces, because it's it gives you a bit of a challenge then, and it gives you something to work with. The entrance here really isn't anything special either. It's just a load of pillars and roofs with some snow on, and then some fences inside. And I did end up naming this park, although I don't think I changed the name in the save file, but I named it Winter Village. But maybe that could just be this small area of the park that's called Winter Village. I'm not sure. I was going to call it Winter Wonderland, but then I thought I'll at least try and be a tiny bit original, because yeah, it's nothing like Winter Wonderland either. It's not overpriced for a start. Well, I say that, actually the coasters in this park are probably about the same price as the ones at Winter Wonderland, to be fair. So on to the final part of the build then. We're working on this bobsled coaster, or this dueling bobsled rather. As you can see there, I took the liberty of redoing all of the terrain work to make it more RCT1-ish, because this part of the map is heavily inspired by Iceberg Islands, which I think was from the Loopy Landscapes pack of Roller Coaster Tycoon 1. I'm sure I already mentioned that at the start of the build, but I recorded that commentary ages ago, so yeah, can't really remember exactly what I said, but yeah, just all the jutted out landscape with coasters going in and out of it and pathwork going in and out of it is sort of what I wanted to go for here. I think that looks really cool in Roller Coaster Tycoon 1 when that's done. I'm sorry if you can hear my phone going off then. I might edit that bit out of the video, but probably not. So my sincerest apologies if you could hear that. Now we're working on a castle. This again is inspired by the RCT1 snowy castle scenery piece, which I used to absolutely love. That piece, it just looked so good for its time, and fitted really well with the snow and ice theming. There's so much you could do with that game. I spent so many hours playing that game, and I'm sure it's sort of what's inspired Parkitect as well. But anyway, sorry, digressing a bit there. So this building I just kept so simple. I barely detailed it at all because it's right at the top of the hill. You're only going to see it on ride. Well, you are going to see it from ground level as well, but you're not going to see it up close unless you're literally on the lift hill for the bobsled. So I just felt like it didn't need to be too detailed, and a building like this wouldn't be that detailed either, and there's not a lot of detailing that I could think to do for it. So yeah, I just keep it really simple like that. And then I went to work on the coaster station for the bobsled coaster, and yeah, this was a really difficult one to do because obviously it's sort of sunken into all this terrain work I've done. It's got coaster track all around it, so just sort of finding what pieces I could fit in really just to cover up the station and make it look good. And the problem is this becomes a bit of a mismatch of themes, because as you can see there, I've put sort of some blue and orange windows on to sort of go with the different track colours. So we've got the blue and the orange side of the dueling coaster. Obviously you pick your side. It's a bit like the dueling Woody at Portaventura, where you pick sort of red or blue and you go and see if you win, basically. And that's sort of what I'm going for here. But the theme is always, with something like that, is always going to come out a bit sort of modern, sort of like research lab, and that's not really what I was going for, even though it sort of fits that theme well, because obviously we've got the castle at the top. So to be honest with you, this theming is a bit all over the place in this section of the park. I probably should have thought about that a bit better when I did the coaster station, but by this point I just wanted to get it finished, and I felt like something simple like that would work fine, and it does. But like I say, the theming's sort of a bit all over the place. So what I ended up going with is the name Icebreaker, which is a rip-off of the coaster at SeaWorld Orlando, but at least this one has got a bit of theming to it. So we have a sign at the front saying Icebreaker, because this whole sort of island is based around this coaster. And then as you walk up, there's some signs I put in as well for the orange excuse me, and the blue dueling tracks, so you can see where you have to go for each one. And that brings us pretty much to the end of the build. So what we're going to do is have a park tour. I can see we're approaching 50 minutes now. I want to keep this under an hour, so I'm going to do a very quick 10-minute park tour, and we're going to go on some of the rides to finish off the video. So I will see you all over there. Hi Hi everyone, and welcome to the final park tour for Ice Shelf Islands. Here you can see the park in full. Then we've got our three differently themed areas. Over here obviously we've got our main street, sort of Christmassy festive village, alpine village almost. That's my favourite part of the park. I'm really happy with how that looks. We'll take a little bit more we'll take a look with a bit more detail in just a sec. Then over here we've got our ice palace, toboggan, bobsled area, whatever you want to call it. And down here we've got more of our sort of ski resort type theming. And obviously our inverted coaster, which covers quite a lot of the map. So I think what we'll do then is zoom in and take a closer look at the park. So here's our entrance area, our winter village building there, and we've got the jumper just on the right there as you come in, as your first ride. You can see this nice little whimsical village house here on the left as you come in, and then we get to our main street village and my favourite part of the park. So here are the first three buildings that I put in. Then I think they work really nicely together. I especially like this red one in the middle. I think that looks really cool. Sorry, let's just take the HUD off for a sec there. And then just behind it you can see the fun little mine train. The only issue that I did have with this, well, I had many issues with it, but one of the issues I had with it was making sure that the mechanic could actually get to the coaster track. So I had to put some path work in and hide it in some backstagey buildings there. I didn't really do a proper backstage for this area. I just made sure that everything that wasn't visible, everything that I didn't want to be seen, is nicely hidden, obviously, by these two facades. So we've got the one in front and then the one at the back. And then at the end we've got our carousel with the nice covered air as well. Next then we'll head down to the ski resort type themed area, which is actually the first part of the theming that I worked on. So for the ice section here, all I've done is blended the path in with the ice colour and put some fencing around it to stop people sort of skidding all over the place, because I couldn't think how else to do that really and make it look somewhat realistic and believable. To me it almost sort of looks like they're ice skating on here, which is kind of a cool thing. Oh, I should have built an ice rink, that would have been a good idea, but never mind, too late now. So we come over to our sort of ski resort, and this is like, you know, your sort of ski lodge with your bars and stuff. So you can get your hot drinks and your food here as well. We've also got the Wipeout here and an indoor dark ride motion simulator there as well. Not my favourite area of the park, but I still think it looks good for what it is. And I really like this coaster station building as well for the inverted coaster. There's a look at the stats if you want to see them: an extreme, excitement, medium intensity, and all the rest of it. So we've got one going up the lift hill now, so let's just give this one a watch. And to be honest, the layout starts a pretty standard B&M invert sort of layout. Unfortunately my operations are always terrible because of the lengths of my coasters and where I put the brake runs, but it's a standard curve drop that you get on a lot of these coasters into a loop, into an Immelman, and then into sort of an airtime moment there, I suppose, into a big helix, and then that goes into the mid-course brake run, although I'd say it's a bit earlier than the mid-course probably at this point. But anyway, it goes into some helixes and a 0G roll over the ice section here, which I think is quite good positioning. In fact, I probably should have done more to theme that in. And then we have our corkscrews going out in front of the main pathway into a tunnel, and then back round into the final sort of helix before the coaster finishes off, goes into the brake run. So yeah, I did add another sort of element there where it goes out to the left, sort of banks out to the left. I think that's quite nice, like an overbanked straight section. It's not something I've ever seen on an invert coaster before, but I think it looks quite cool. So yeah, I'm happy with that one. I think it's probably the best coaster in the park. So that really just leaves us to go and have a look at this bobsled coaster, this dueling bobsled that we've got here. Like I said before, it's called Icebreaker, and then we've got the orange path here, or the orange section here, and the blue section here, so the guests can see where to go. I think the theming works alright on this, even though it's a bit all over the place. And take a look at it from afar. I didn't really show you the castle properly in the time lapse, but there it is. Very simple, very basic. Windows made from chimneys. Everything else is just basic shapes and wall pieces. Nothing really special there at all. I did do some custom supports for the lift hill of the coaster. I was going to do it all the way round, but I didn't have time, and I wanted to get this done in the end. So let's take a ride on Icebreaker. There's the stats for anyone that wants to see them. Extreme excitement, low intensity, pretty standard for this type of coaster. Oh no, we're not getting a good dueling one. I hate it when that happens, because of the timing I've got on this. They're not always running at the same time. In fact, that's annoyed me enough that I'm going to pause it, and and we're going to get one that's dueling. Yeah, got them almost exact now. So that is pretty much the layout. It's just a load of dueling helixes. It's a really obviously different concept to anything that exists in real life, but I think it works really well for this scenario. I'm really glad I went for the dueling element for this coaster, because yeah, I'm happy with how it turned out. There's one that always wins. I mean, the dueling aspect of it isn't great, but like you saw before, should we quickly do the other one as well? We'll do the blue track, and obviously you can see it's pretty much the same. The blue one's slightly winning here. At this point they should be identical, because it's before they sort of break away from each other and start doing their own things. So there's no like, if my operations were better, there's no reason that they wouldn't sort of run at exactly the same time. But yeah, I mean, it looks really cool. It duels okay, and yeah, I'm happy with how it turned out. So that's pretty much it for Ice Shelf Islands then. Let's take one more look at the park before we quit. As you can see, this is the completed Ice Shelf Islands map. Once again, yeah, it comes together pretty well, this one. Took me a bit of time to get everything how I wanted. Quite a lot of trial and error for this one. But the goals themselves weren't that difficult to complete, and the scenery theme was quite fun to work with, especially it being Christmas at the moment. So what I'm going to do is go back to the menu, and we'll see what we've got next. There you can see then our completed double coinage on the map. All goals completed for Ice Shelf Islands, and unfortunately we don't see the thing land, because this isn't my first playthrough of these maps. I'm really sorry about that, but you know, I'm sure you've seen it before. So that leaves us with, which I believe would have the choice of these two from what I remember at the same time. Happy Cove Harbour, which is quite a tough one, and Biscayne Beach, which I remember really struggling with before, because you charge entrance fee but you can't charge for the rides. So yeah, I'm going to do Happy Cove Harbour next, I think, but that won't be at least till the new year. So thank you very much for watching this one, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye then.